All right, guys, welcome. I hope you guys are staying warm in this chilly weather. I know that I have at least 1.5 feet of snow on the ground up here in South Bend. I'm not looking forward to snow blowing it. I'm going to take care of this first and then do that. Anyway, let's do a quick cluster. This is going to be a quickie. It's not going to take very much time. I'll be on here for less than 10 minutes of your time, and then you and your team will be able to work to complete the task at the end. Ladies and gentlemen, basically when we talked about this, simply we're going to run out of time before our units start if we don't have this virtual cluster, so that's why we're doing it right now this way. Okay? Today's topic is learning targets. So last week, quick little agenda. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. Our agenda, we're going to do a quick review of last week. We're going to identify learning targets and success criteria. We're going to do a model quick. I'm just going to model what I did. And then you guys are going to work with your PLCs on your own time. So that's what our goal is. A quick little review of last week. We were working in these windows. We have completed a know, understand, and do. And we've developed progressions, which are small chunks that lead a student to the path of success for the far goal. Okay? So for this week, all we're going to do is we're going to take care of these two learning targets. So our Habits of Scholarships learning target, we're still going to stick with grit, which is just sticking with challenging work and making adjustments as needed while encouraging myself and others. And then our major learning target for today is that you will be able to create learning targets for a priority standard utilizing the 5 critical attributes. So we're going to be creating learning targets within our unit or our priority standard that we've been planning, and we're going to utilize 5 critical attributes. If you look at our quick rubric here, okay, you'll see how I will be assessing you when I look at your units. Okay, so if you're looking for a 3, which is what our goal is, your learning targets are successfully created utilizing the 5 critical attributes. So what do we need to learn? Well, we need to know what in the world are those 5 critical attributes just to make sure that we're going to get our 3. So here's our critical attributes. Number 1, it is written in student-friendly language, so easy for students to understand. We're not using overly hard words or overabundance of things. We're trying to do little things, okay? Student-friendly. Use concrete and accessible verbs such as identify, compare, analyze. You're going to see me have create here today. Just something that's accessible. 3, they're specific. They're going to be referred to in particular context of a lesson, okay? So specific. We're not trying to do multiple things at once. We just want to be very honed into what we're teaching. 4 is going to be focused on the intended learning, not the intended doing. So I'm probably not going to say as a student, I will make a cake today. That's just probably not going to work because we don't know what we're learning about. And 5, they need to be measurable. And that's the one that's going to take us just a little bit more time, and you're going to see that at the end why that's really important, okay? So let's move on. All right, so here we go. Last week, you guys created these wonderful learning progressions. These are the progressions that we created for time, okay? We kind of did those, you kind of saw those together. I showed you those. And then we looked a little bit at money. K2 cluster actually tried to make some progressions for money. 3-5, we moved into our spec sheets. All right, so what we're doing today is we're taking these progressions and we're turning them into learning targets. Okay, so as you can see, I can identify the 5 ways that time is measured. So a student should be able to identify the 5 ways that time is measured. Okay, that's what they're going to be doing. All right, so it's student friendly. They know exactly what they're going to do. It's concrete, so they're using the word identify. Right? It's specific. We know we're talking about how time is measured. We know what they're learning, how time is measured, and then we're going to measure it. Okay, so it's going to be measurable, and I'm going to show you that here in just a few minutes. Same thing down here. You guys will see that all of these progressions turn into learning targets. Now, that might not necessarily happen on yours. Some of your progressions might turn into 1 learning target. That's okay. Sometimes you have 1 progression that needs to branch off and turn into 2. And I will give you a quick rundown, is that I actually think that this progression will eventually turn into 2 learning targets, okay? We don't do that here, but we will see it in our plans. That 1, being able to draw time on an analog clock and being able to tell time are 2 different skills. So we're probably going to need to break that up into 2 different learning targets. We didn't do it when we first did our field testing. but we recognized it and fixed it later. Okay, so just so you know that sometimes a progression can turn into 2, or sometimes 2 progressions can turn into 1. Just so you know, it's not an exact science. All right, let's move on. Okay, so for example, in our time standard, we need to be able to just know what an analog clock is. And so we're trying to do an introduction to an analog clock. It's pretty much a review, okay? And so our learning target that we created was that as a student, I can accurately identify and label the parts of an analog clock. So they need to be able to identify them and label them, right? So here we go. Inside we really needed that mastery piece, right? We didn't talk about necessarily how they were going to master it in our learning target, so I created a rubric. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, there's other ways that you can do this, but my math brain just goes straight to a rubric because I can just see the 1, 2, and 3 very clearly. If there's other ways that you guys can use to identify how and measure how a student's going to succeed, that's fine, but we want to make sure that we include it in our work today, okay? So, for example, for a 1, a student is able to correctly identify 2 or fewer of the 4 parts of an analog clock. So if they're only able to get the minute hand and the hour hand, they're forgetting some of these other things, okay? And these are the 4 things that I'm looking for, so I just wanted to make sure I knew of them. I need the minute hand, the hour intervals, and the minute intervals. And as you can see, 2, they got 3 out of the 4, and to get a 3, they would get all 4. Now, does your rubric have to be a 1 through 3? No, it could be a 1 through 4, but I actually only used 1 through 3 because I know that this part and this progression and this learning target are a review. So I didn't put a 4 on there because you can't really go above and beyond on this, okay? So now, some people might say, well, you could identify the second hand. Yeah, maybe, but you'd have to include that in your activity, all right? So now what do we do with it? We create these learning targets. We create this mastery criteria for mastery for a student. Where do we put it in our document? Well, as you can tell, we put our learning targets in the box under learning targets. But if you scroll down, you'll see success criteria in your plans. If you create success criteria, okay, we're not really worried so much about how you order them and lay them out per day yet, but there's a block down here that you can put them in. So you can see that we have 3 of these that we created for this unit. All right, some of them are a little bit different than what I wrote, but that's where you're going to put them. So really we're working on the learning targets and the success criteria kind of together. Later on, we're going to get into an exemplar, which will really help with additional critical attributes, but for now we're focusing on that learning target. Remember, we had 5 critical attributes, okay? So we want to make sure we have those 5 critical attributes when we're working within our plans. Remember, this is where you're working, okay? And this is your develop time, okay? So, really, if you want to look right here, we have our rubric for success. Our learning target was that you will be able to create learning targets for a priority standard utilizing the 5 critical attributes, okay? And there we are, okay? So, we have 2 tasks for this week, the 2 things that you want to do. We want to create learning targets with your PLC. That's it. Sit down with your group, or if one of you guys kind of wants to work digitally across whatever, this is not due until you come to cluster next week, so it needs to be done before you come to cluster. And 2, I want you to check in with the grade level below you to identify what content within your unit is covered by them. So, for example, in time, 2nd grade starts telling time. I want to know all of what they cover and how far they get, because that's going to allow me to eliminate some of the things that I'm going to do extra, or maybe some of my progressions I might be able to shorten. So we just want to have that little bit of info so you're not teaching the same thing over and over again, you're building on. So we're just really looking for that vertical alignment, okay? So before I go, I'm going to go back to those 5 critical attributes. Just remember, we want you to create learning targets with those 5 critical attributes, so I'm going to go back here. These are our 5 critical attributes. Hey. Good luck, ladies and gentlemen. Stay warm. Sorry you had to listen to me on this thing, but at least it's short and quick, and I got you done before 10 minutes. I'm out. Have a great day.